Hey everyone, and welcome back to Master Your Life Beyond the Boardroom. I am your podcast host, Luke Beestall, and I have a USA entrepreneur joining us today in the studio. His name is Morgan Rich. He is the founder of a Beyond community, which is deeply rooted in men's work, but he works with younger people as well. And we just had a brief chat before, and just kind of expanding on what I had actually said to him. His application was insane, like the depth that it actually went to and the work that he's doing and the way he's giving back to the world with great energy. I have to say great energy, because I think in today's society, great energy authentically is hard to come by. He's doing amazing work. He's also an author as well, which will make sure that people are aware of that. But look, I just want to introduce you in, Morgan, because I think this is going to be a great conversation.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's sweet, Luke. I do a fair number of these, and what I'm noticing just right now is like my heart's beating a little bit. I feel like there's an excitement, there's a little nervousness going, and it just feels like, and some emotion in there too. Just I really appreciate that, kindness and introduction, and excited to dive in here.
Yeah, absolutely, and this is what I love about even just us being here today. Obviously you talk a lot about in the now and the presence and stuff like that, and there's something that you shared which I think would actually be really nice to open up our conversation. You'd spoken about you feel that there needs to be, or you'd like to see, more human leaders in our world, in our society. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah. What I mean by that is that I think that we know that there is a different way forward than is what is presented in both in Europe and in the United States. That there's a way that is like success that we've bought into that isn't really working very well. And for me, I look out and I feel in myself, and this is just my commitment, is like I want to bring love, connection, care, humanity to the world. In the business context of being a leader who holds people with care and wants the best for people, who wants my people to thrive, who wants my people to feel alive, who wants my people to be healthy and not just like producing, but like good human beings doing good work in the world. To me, that is something we've gotten away from, and I would say we've even betrayed ourselves in so many ways, thinking that there's this other path. So much of my work is saying, let's come back home. Let's come back home to that humanity, to that love, to that connection with the more than human world, with this beautiful natural world that we're part of, and bring that alive and bring that out into the world. So that to me is the humanity that I stand for, and is about the beyond, and is about, just how I want to live my life every day.
Yeah, obviously you can tell, Morgan. Just for the people, tuning in on this, you can really tell even the way you articulate yourself. You're very calm. You've got passion in what you say, and I can really feel that what you're doing day to day has so much purpose and meaning, right? So if anyone's sort of like coming in and they just go, I know what you're saying, Morgan, I can't really grasp it as such. Where did this mindset come for you? Was it something you've developed? Have you had to work to get to this space? Yeah, just share a little bit about that journey for us.
Yeah, well, I was talking to someone last week, a mom, and her son the dad had died, had committed suicide when he was 15. And it woke up something in me where my dad died when I was 18. And it I just keep having to get clear on that, on this piece. But what the kid was talking about was saying that in the death, right, in when he's, what I like to say is the veil is thin when we're around death. And something woke up in him just like it did when I was 18 and my dad died. Incredibly difficult, right? Just some of the darkest time of my life and the biggest gift. Just a huge gift. And I kept thinking, okay, how do I give this gift to the world without having to have somebody die? Because what woke up in me in the depth, in the difficulty, I didn't numb, I didn't drink, I didn't do drugs, I didn't act out. I just sat in the difficulty, which was amazing and kind of a miracle that I figured out how to do that when I was 18. But through that emerged me. I got really connected to, here's how I want to be in the world. Here's this place of, I want to like be in the meaningful conversations, in the important places. I want to treat people with care, like I said, that this way of being emerged, and I couldn't quite grab onto it. I couldn't quite get it. And this kid is saying the same thing. He's saying, here I am, and like there's this beautiful thing opening in me. Like he can feel it, and he's looking out at the world, and he's going, okay, I'm going to school today. And no one is having the conversation about what the hell's going on inside of me. There's nowhere for this emerging vision, this emerging like depth of aliveness of like the real thing. And we aren't fucking talking about it. There aren't the leaders, the teachers, the whatever adults around who are saying like, wait, I see that in you. There's something in you that's wanting to come alive. I can see beneath all the nonsense into this beautiful thread that wants to come. And that never happened for me, right? No one ever came and sort of grabbed me and said, I see you over there crying, and that I feel like is part of what we want. What we need in leadership, what we need in elders, what we need in parents, what we need in educators. To me, that's a rich space.
It is. And why do you feel then that people aren't finding that or saying it or trying to explore it?
Yeah. Well, it's uncomfortable is some of it, is to say that there's this funny thing of we don't have a culture that's set up in the US. And I think that's true. I think it's true in Europe as well, where that kind of thing gets cultivated, where there are elders sitting around. And there's some old, beautiful stories of in native cultures where that was the role of the elder. And so then they did have a beautiful role, which was they would sit around and watch the kids playing. And they would see like, oh, look at Luke. Luke's got that beautiful ability to listen. He's got like something in him that I care that is present. Oh, and look at that Morgan over there. Look at him. He's got this ability he has an ability to listen also. Let's match him up with, this person because they can do this thing together. And so it's hard because we don't have the infrastructure both internally, like we aren't taught, how do I be in the adversity? How do I be in the difficulty, in that transformational space, which takes presence, which takes care and love of self, which takes having practices to be able to breathe and to really get yourself connected to discomfort, to get our cells and our infrastructure, our nervous system, our mind all on board with, okay, I can be here in this whoop, and something good is going to emerge. So yeah, it's hard. It is hard, and it's right there.
Yeah, I think I appreciate that, and I can tell as well. And obviously, for me though, Morgan, I can understand, right? I think that uncomfortable, that sort of lump in the throat, that heart sinking moment of, if you're coming into contact with somebody that's probably had trauma or, had a massive loss or in a really deep, dark hole, and maybe they've bottled it up to be able to. And I know this in England quite often as well. I mean, I'll put my hands up and say I've been in some of these experiences before where I've struggled maybe how to deal with it. Obviously over time and holding space and listening and slowing down, it's really helped. So for you back at 18, I mean, this is key because obviously you've developed this identity. You've become such a strong man, and obviously you're giving back now. When you lost your father at 18, what was happening at that point in your life? Like, where did you? Because obviously you said that you didn't go down the numbing route, which I think is fantastic. That because I know so many angry kids, frustration, just take it out, go and party hard. What did you do straight away? What was your sort of action off the back of that?
It was an interesting time of life. I mean, I'm 18, so I'm transitioning in the U.S. I'm transitioning out of high school into college. I had been in high school. I went away to pursue my dream of playing Olympic hockey, actually professional hockey, ice hockey, and that dream, I had lost that dream, and I had been away and already through a certain rite of passage, let's call it, of really having to start to learn, how do I, like, there's a lot of pain in this world, in my body, in my experience. So I get to college, and, my dad died in January of my first year. So right away. And I can't say that I was in any way like there was no plan or programming or like, oh, here's the way to get through grief. And
Sure.
or like, here's what's going on. I was just kind of like, ouch. And I would sit and cry a lot. And, the party scene at college is well known, that people go and get hammered a lot and go out, and it's kind of the way you relate and the way you socialize. And I just wanted to have meaningful conversations. I wanted to be held. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to, so I would just sit by myself a lot, and I would sit with the natural world. There was a beautiful lake by my college. And so I'd sit with the lake, and the moon would be there. And I would always think, wherever you are, Dad, like, I might well cry. So I love crying. Yeah. Thank you. That I would see the moon. I'd be like, okay, wherever you are, you can see that too. And I would feel the wind, and I just somehow I knew what to do, even though I had no idea. And what I did was I sat and was in it, and again, like, got really angry, screamed at God, screamed at just the darkness, the dark night of the soul, the time of, I didn't want to harm myself. I didn't want to break anything. I didn't want to do damage, but I needed, so I would squeeze rocks. I would take rocks and I would squeeze rocks. Then I would just throw them as hard as I could at the water and just scream. And there was a train track there that I would goof around on. And I just remember thinking, like, okay, I'm not going to kill myself, but if a train were to come or someone to jump out and just take me, that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Like, this is so painful. And through that, there was a death. Now I know, I see that there was a death. Like I call a little d death, not Morgan actually dying and going in the ground, but the innocence dying, the previous life dying, the time that I had with my dad dying. And in that, just like a forest fire, a forest fire is wildly destructive. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of suffering. There's a lot of darkness. But in that also it cleanses. And what it does is there's some acorns and there's some pieces that only open in the heat and the intensity of the fire. And I believe that to be true about the human soul and the human experience, that we have to be in those hard places in order to cleanse, let go, let things die, let things go away, and then for things to emerge. So that was, it was intense. And again, a gift I would, incredibly meaningful. And I keep asking, is there a way to get there without having to go through that much suffering? And I don't know the answer, but that's certainly my quest.
I mean, thank you, Morgan, for sharing that and being vulnerable, by the way, because it's never easy. I mean, I'm sure you've shared it so many times and stuff like that, but be able to share it to a complete stranger who we've only met briefly is really cool. So thank you for that. And look, obviously, I can feel the immense pain that you've gone through, and obviously for me, I've got empathy for that. And obviously, I'm sure people listening to this be going, "Oh wow!" I mean, what I'm hearing from this is that if anyone was to sort of look from the outside in, would be going, "Okay, so Morgan Rich, he's this super talented ice hockey player." Going to college, probably, getting all the girls, having lots of fun, just living the dream, right? And then bang, bomb drops, father sort of exits the world, the pain hits, the anger kicks in, but you just sit with nature to sort of slow down. I mean, just through this process of pain and the grieving part, what really did help you the most, Morgan, through this?
Yeah. Well, there are a couple things. One is just to say that I sort of wish that had been the story, you know, of getting all the girls and playing ice hockey. But one of the interesting pieces was, you know, one of the things that emerged is I've always been a really sensitive guy. Okay. And thank you, by the way, for the elegance with which you just received and invited the tears. I find that one of the things that's challenging for men, particularly, is that when we cry, when I notice when men cry in public, they always apologize. There's an apology, like, so sorry. And for you to say like thank you or just like, you know, like welcome is a really different. It may feel subtle, but it actually is deeply meaningful because it is part of. Why is it so hard to bring ourselves forward? Because we have models. You know, in fact, the Budweiser ad in the Super Bowl, right, was like this beautiful ad meant to be super touching. You know, this connection with nature and the natural world, and it was about Budweiser, which is annoying, but whatever. You know, and then at the end of the ad, which again is designed to evoke emotion, there's an older man standing there, and his son says, "You crying?" And he goes, "No, sun's in my eyes." Right. And it's like, okay, right there in the biggest stage in the world, America on display for like, here's the Western world offering itself as an example of how to be in the world. And that's what we get. I mean, it's subtle, not subtle of it's not okay to be emotional. And so I want to say thank you. You know, thank you for that piece. Thank you for that piece. And then, you know, again, so coming back to the, you know, your question, which is to say like emerging in me was this, you know, so I was in a hockey locker room, tough, all the crazy, shitty, hard, teasing, gay bashing, you know, cock size, you know, joking.
Oh yeah, I know.
Insecurity and all that kind of crap. You know, and here I am, this like sensitive dude, and also super competitive, right? Like, so both of these things. But I wasn't confident enough to be getting girls. I wasn't confident enough to sort of stand up to that at that point. You know, so through my dad dying, what happened in the grief was I started to feel this emergent of, oh my God, this is, you know, this matters. And you know, one of the things that didn't happen was I didn't have any adult men, anyone really, come and see me on the bench, come and see me and help me understand what was going on. And so there I am alone in all of this, trying to make sense of it, not having resources. Again, this is just part of my story because I know there are people who can talk into this world, but not enough. You know, I think part of what we're doing here is I want to shine light on the pathway of the soul I believe, you know, and I think a lot of your listeners, you're talking about just their beautiful journey and where they are and that they're, you know, at these transformation points, they have passion coming through them, that they're wanting to emerge and wake up and feel this and bring something meaningful, bring something different, bring something out into the world. And it's like, yes, please. Yes. And so like shining light on like, let's please connect to our hearts. This is a meaningful pathway. This is, you know, what we're doing isn't working, right? Men are committing suicide at incredible rates. They're depressed. They're anxious. The world is in all kinds of nuttiness, you know? And it's just like, okay, we have got to do something different. And for me, it's about all your listeners. It's about each one of us connecting to that part that wants to come alive. I mean, your journey, you know, your beautiful journey of saying like, wait a second, there's not humanity in this place. Like, this is all about production and money and that. And like, I'm interested in meaning. I'm interested in relationship. I'm interested in intimacy. I'm interested in people thriving and feeling alive. Like, let's each do that as best we can. And to me, that's what started to emerge in that dark time, is like, okay, there's something here that I don't know what it is. And I can't put my finger on it quite, but I'm committed to it. And I'm going to keep figuring out, like, how do I get this in the world? Here I am.
Honestly, I just find the fact that you found that is pretty amazing. Because like I say, you've probably in adversity gone the way that, you know, some people go, but probably where most people don't go. Obviously, you're a sensitive guy, so I mean, I'm sensitive as well, Morgan. So that's something we've definitely got in common.
Yeah.
Totally understand the banter, the changing rooms. I played football or soccer, is in the United States, so totally get that. I was very in tune with my emotions, so I'm sort of like, yeah, relating. I'm sure people listening will relate to this as well. So you sort of found this path. To, I guess, a bit of a light, an awakening, a breakthrough, to want to be able to help more people open up, be themselves. So for you, you just spoken about obviously the men's world and stuff like that. For you in your life, when you'd obviously come out of the grieving process and you started to, I'm not saying find yourself again, but maybe get through that rough period. What was your breakthrough moment? When was that?
Yeah. There's an interesting piece in here, which is there's an integrity piece, because it was really tempting, and actually, like, a lot of the guidance that I did get was saying, like, hey, just calm down, and just do what you're supposed to do, just play the game and everything will be okay. And there were all these moments of as this is coming alive in me and I'm not fully understanding it, there's all these opportunities to jump off and jump into this sort of normal culture status quo, doing what we're supposed to be doing. And for me, there was this really, really deep integrity of just saying, like, okay, I know what it feels like to be alive, and I can't do it otherwise. There's this old proverb, which is, the two hardest things that you'll ever find in your life are not knowing what you want and knowing what you want. Because when you know, it's got you. And then you got to go, or else you're betraying yourself, and which I think is happening actually a lot in the world, right? We're getting caught by our phones, by all the temptation to numb, to check out, to go different directions, to succumb to the pressure, to rely on the external variables of success rather than the internal variables of success. To say, like, wait, actually, the clothes, the house, the, that I have, the accolades that I get from outside are more important than this integrity. So there I am in this, holding on to my integrity. It's been a hard journey. It continues to be, because there's, I've had to redefine success for myself. It hasn't been easy. It hasn't been, money doesn't like flow in like crazy. Getting men to show up for coaching and for work is challenging.
Sure.
And so for me, that's been one of the challenges, is it hasn't been an easy path. But when I was, I was going along and got married, had kids, loved being a dad, just deeply, deeply meaningful. And yet I was still sort of struggling along under the surface, trying to figure out, like, how do there's something that's off. So when I was 39, a friend of mine handed me a back in the day we had DVDs, a CD, of like a audio recording. It wasn't a podcast. Yeah. It was like a audio tape. And so I listened. It was a man named Michael Meade, mythologist and storyteller. And he told a story about his journey in the Vietnam War. And he was drafted. He just said, like, yeah, not really up for this. Just don't think it's a great idea. They're like, no, you don't actually have a choice. So he ends up going. He's not good at following orders. So he gets thrown in solitary confinement, and in solitary confinement, they still giving him orders. And he's still like, I'm not going to follow the orders. So he takes his clothes off, hunger strike. He's there, just like, and he tells a story of, a general would come and talk to him and be like, what are you doing? And he said, I would rather die here, naked, hungry, in my cell, than I would go out there and kill people that I don't know for reasons that I don't understand and I don't agree with. And to me, that was his, and he said, like, I was 20, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but something emerged in me that just said, I can't do that. Like, here is me at some foundational level, and I got to live aligned with that. And for me, like, that had been so much of my journey. Like, my dad dies, like, there's this awakening in me. And then I was like, I got like, there's something wanting to come alive here. And I can't quite grab it. Like, I can't quite, like, why is, and I didn't have the support coming in. And so when I heard Michael's story, it was like that level, like, it resonated so deeply, that level of integrity. Like, I would rather die. I'd rather die than I would play the game that is killing the world, and compromise. And one of the jumps that I make is to say, the Epstein files just came out in the United States of all these men, really successful men and women, but who are way off track. Like, they are so far from humanity to be able to treat, to like be a sexual predator in that way is so far off of what of like what lives inside of me, and I think us. And so so it's just like, it's who I am. I don't know how else to describe, it's who I've been, and it emerged through the alchemy of the difficulty and the death of the darkness. It emerged in there.
I mean, just the fact that your friend had handed you that, right? That DVD. Do you think you'd be where you are today?
It's really hard. I mean, no, right? I would be somewhere else because sure. Like that, that was a path that emerged, and that was the, that was a thing that came. So, would I have found myself to this exact place? Probably not. But I can't imagine I'd be far off. Just because so much of the work about being present and about this what I've come to realize and learn is, well, what I'm doing is being present. Like, this is about presence, and it's about listening, and it's about bringing, and about being able to be in life's interesting moments. And life, when I'm sitting there watching the natural world, connecting to the moon and the stars and the leaves and the fall and you watch cycles happen when you sit day after day. And I do sit day after day, daily meditation, sitting with the natural world, watching, a week ago, the daffodils in my yard were just beginning to come up. Now I'm sitting today and they're blooming, right? The emergence of life, the emergence of beauty, the emergence, if you just get present day after day, things start to shift. And then as I keep sitting here long enough, they're then going to die. And it's going to be okay. Like, it's all okay. Like, that's what happens in life, is we have little D deaths and little B births. And when we can be with them, when we have a nervous system resilient enough, strong enough to know that, okay, here I am struggling. Here I am in the darkness. After you left your work and you were out there, there's a challenge in there. It's hard. And if you can hang in there and just know that, okay, I can do this day. Here I am. A lot of, sensation, a lot of challenge, and it's okay. It's okay. Tomorrow, maybe the flowers will bloom, or they won't. But
see, I think just what you're sharing. I mean, obviously, I've had a few guests on this show, Morgan, that talk about the seasons and the cycles, and talk about like autumn, winter, all those things. Now things change, and they're outside connecting with nature and stuff like that. And people, I think a lot of people listening to this might feel uncomfortable. And I don't mean this in a bad way from your side. I just mean feel uncomfortable that you're talking about a daffodil like this. Because people, I know, and I don't mean it, like I said, I don't mean it in a bad way. People are just like, what is this guy talking about, right? What is he on? Yeah. This is just crazy chat. However, they're missing the point of actually what it means, sort of that humanity, that connecting, that depth. So for you, if we sort of look at, like what you see day to day, and like you've spoken about the society and you're wanting more human leaders and all those kinds of stuff. What do you feel is sort of the bottleneck for a lot of individuals that maybe not living the life or moving towards that potential that people are not seeing? What do you think that is?
Yeah, there's a couple different things. I mean, one is that we don't have the infrastructure to be able to navigate in difficulty. Right? We don't have the infrastructure on board. Our nervous systems aren't trained to be able to hang in that difficulty. So that's one piece, and I'll go into that a little bit more in a second here. The other piece, of course, is that I think a lot of our leadership in the world is about they're very focused on themselves. They're very that there's not the beautiful, powerful leaders who we can actually trust are here really want to move us forward. They want to move them forward.
True.
Again, like for me, yeah. And so there's a gap in there, which makes it, we don't have the trust, the faith in our leadership to say like, okay, if we just hang in there, things are going to get better. Because you're like, no, you're just a selfish, selfish person just out for your own good. Like, you don't actually care about me. So, and thanks for saying the part about the daffodils and that, because that's part of actually, so what I call, the work I do is training for the unknown. Because through all of the difficulty, what happened was I was like, well, what is my journey about? And I really know that the wound, the place that we're hurting, is also the place we're most gifted. Like, I know intimately what it feels like to be in that adversity, because I lived it for years and I rummaged around in there. And so what came from that was what I call training for the unknown. So it's actually training to be able to be in those moments. So daily meditation, daily breath, I don't care what you call it. Like, you can call it meditation, you call it breath. It doesn't matter to me. What it's about is it's about learning, like, here I am, I can do this breath right here. We can breathe right here. And when I do that, I can just be with whatever is. And so the one breath, and I'd like to say, part of the training for the unknown is discomfort training also. So it's saying, okay, how do I increase the intensity of this one breath? Right? So now I'm doing a breath, but I'm doing a breath now while I'm uncomfortable. I'm standing in cold water. Right? So now we have a lot more information coming in. We have a lot more sensation coming in that my brain wants to say is uncomfortable. But if I can learn to hang in that, I'm learning to structure my cells, my nervous system, my mind, my emotional body, my spiritual body, to be able to stay and hang in the difficulty, right? And be able to hang in there. Because what happens is that when I get quiet, what really wants to emerges. Oh, and this happened to me. I have to leave my marriage. Oh, I'm not happy at this job. Oh, I have to have a really uncomfortable conversation with my partner, or my kid is having a hard time. I gotta step up. And if we don't have the ability to sit quietly and listen into that place, well, let's say it this way: when we do have that ability, then this inconvenient thing surfaces, and we realize, like, I gotta step into this. I go back to the integrity piece of, now I feel it, and now I got it. Now I got to do it. Now I got to step in there and actually have the conversation. And to be able to do that takes courage, and it takes presence, and it takes resilience, because it's intense, and that's the way life is.
Yeah, I totally resonate with that, and I'm sure so many people are like thinking, oh my gosh, this is probably some hard conversations I'm currently avoiding. Do you just I mean, that was great what you shared there. There's so much gold in that and so much insight. Just a quick one on that. Do you feel, and this is obviously your opinion, do you feel that people avoid those hard conversations with themselves or others due to lack of presence and slowing down, or do you think it's something different?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. I mean, I think it's a combination of they're uncomfortable, and we've learned, and our current culture is such that we can numb ourselves and distract ourselves really fast.
Yes,
really fast. right? You just grab your phone and you're off on Instagram. You're off into sports. You're off into music. You're off into, wherever, Neverland. And so we live in a culture that is wanting to pull our attention away from those meaningful moments. So it's really, really easy. Like, I have a lot of compassion for the young guys, who I think one of the reasons for all the depression and anxiety is because there is this thing wanting to emerge. Young people are closer to that desire. They know, they see the bullshit in the culture, and they want to bring this other thing alive, but they don't know how. And then what happens is they feel like, oh, how do I get that out there? And there's such easy distraction. So it collapses, and they're like, oh, this is painful. Porn.
Yeah.
Video games. Whatever. Like, whatever their, whatever our particular trauma, weak spot is, drugs, that we fall into that. So it's hard. It's that we have gotten away from the importance of and the ability to step into those hard conversations. And again, there's a lot of training that says, if you do, like, the crying thing may seem like a small thing, but it's actually significant. And in the locker rooms, if I'm like, oh, I'm really having a hard time with my partner, and you say that in a hockey locker room, you're going to get teased. You're going to get, there's going to be, there's just those little snide comments that make it seem like, oh, what are you weak? Oh, what are you, a pussy? What are you, whatever it might be, which doesn't make it like, that's not a warm fuzzy. That's like I shouldn't be feeling this. A dude just last week said, like, I just stopped drinking after 40 years. And he said it in the locker room. And the response was, oh, that's not going to last very long. Or, oh, really? Well, can you get me a beer? And it's just like, seriously? Like, this dude just took this really courageous action.
Yeah.
Like, how beautiful, so what happens for me is that I am in the locker room, and then all of a sudden there's a dude sitting next to me, because I speak into those places. And he's like, I'm having a really hard time with my wife. You want to go have lunch? Because there's a safe place for that energy. And so I think having and stepping into those places, some people do it really naturally and beautifully. And others really struggle with it. But it's that, like, that's the answer. Like, the way we solve the world's problems isn't by, like, going out and doing these gigantic things. From my perspective, it's about stepping into that conversation. Like, that's the energy of transformation right there. And so why presence and why the training for the unknown is significant is because it matters. And because, like, as I see it, when we're able to get and have the ability, and this is what I do in my groups, it's beautiful to watch the guys in the groups, because we do this work, and then they're able to step into and towards those uncomfortable places. And instead of being teased, they get encouraged, they get held, they get seen. And that makes it way easier, to step into these places rather than avoid them.
Yeah, I think obviously you've really gone into detail there, which is great, and I think that is so true. When somebody comes up with, even if they're going to the friends and maybe they've been socializing, if we keep it quite relatable as well, drinking, and then you go, look, I'm not going to drink tonight. You just decide to maybe have a night. Oh, you're boring. Yeah. And it's straight away that, like, yeah, there's none of that empathy. There's none of that sort of, oh, well done. No, good for you. Yeah, absolutely. Do what you need to do. We can still have a good night sort of thing. It's always the negative. It's always, and it's the same thing, obviously, with what I do, like with regarding coaching fitness and well-being and stuff like that, that people, let's say, for example, they go into the office and they've got a salad as an example, right? And, whoa, what's that? Oh, we're going to have pizza today. Do you want pizza? And you go, no, I've got my own lunch today. Thank you, though. And they go, gosh, oh, that's like rabbit food, whatever. And it's just, it's absolutely, it's mental, isn't it? Like what you said, like there's not, those conversations would make a significant difference. For you then, obviously you've been doing this work. How long have you been doing this work now? Morgan, with regarding
yeah.
Forever.
Good.
Yeah, forever.
Yeah, I would say forever, and sort of formally for like 25, 30 years.
Oh, insane. So this is great then. So what from this like experience that you've learned and grasped and been able to give them back, what have you learned what have you learned the most about yourself?
Yeah, well, I mean, I keep, like I say, I'm in this. If it's not obvious, I hope it's obvious. That I don't want to sit here and like theorize and be like, okay, like I'm the dude on the mountain, and I'm just gonna like drop wisdom on y'all because I've got it all figured out.
Yeah.
I'm in it. I'm in it every day, and I think the thing that I've learned about myself that it's easy for me to forget. Interestingly, all of these pieces, and I forget my heart. And so what I've learned is that I have to have my daily practice. I gotta be committed to my 5 minutes of meditation, my cold plunge, and not cold plunge like trying to flex about how long I can stay in a cold plunge about being really present and helping my nervous system stay calm in the adversity of it. When I do that, when I do these practices, which, to me are just beautiful and shift around some also, that they aren't always like, this is the practice, and everyone doesn't have the same one. I get connected into that place in me, and I go and I feel it. I'm like, okay, what is it? What is that goodness? What is that humanity? What is that way that I want to be in the world that is really meaningful? And I go in there and I'm like, okay, what is the energetic imprint of that feeling? And when I do that day after day, then I live as many moments of the day committed to that feeling as I can. And when I don't do that practice, I start to, like, it seems so strange, Luke. I mean, that I start to sort of forget how to be that guy. And I start to get pulled towards all the compromises and I'm like, am I crazy? Like, am I just nuts and off track? And so I can get pulled away. And so I think what I've learned is it takes devotion and it takes care. And for me, this practice is transformational energy of the world. It's by my doing that, then I am engaging with the people in my life, with my beautiful, loving, incredible partner, that we create magic together, that I am bringing the energy that I want the world to feel, to have, out. And if I'm not connected to that thing, then I'm not doing that. And by not doing it, it's that's not doing anything. That's just me grumping and grinding and falling into the nonsense of the culture.
Yeah, I mean, so what's really screaming at me here, though, Morgan, is something that we hear quite commonly on here, but it's still really, really hard for a lot of people to do, and especially probably at the stages that our audience are in right now, is that being able to give back to yourself, first. Yeah. Being able to look after yourself, doing the daily stuff first, rather than putting everybody else first,
I feel like falling in love with myself. I mean, that's what I do every morning. I fall back in love with myself. As I say, like, okay, here I am, and I am the only person in the whole world who can be Morgan. Right? I have my trauma. I have my relationships. I have my parents. I have where I was born. I have my body. I have my, experiences. I have, like, that's all mine. No one else has that. And so the only life I can live is mine. And the significance of having myself, that's another piece of training for the unknown, is I've got me. Is what I know is that when things get really woo, and if I have a conversation and it goes totally sideways and I totally screw it up, that I can come back home, I can go be with my daffodils, and watch them and feel them and know, like, I'm okay. I'm right here. I can do this breath. I've got me. I don't need the validation of anything outside of myself. Like I've got it. You know, like I know myself. I trust myself. And to me, that's the foundation. Without that, we can't do any of the stuff we're talking about, because we get caught in, you know, why is it so hard to have the conversations with people? Because when it goes sideways, you think like, oh my God, I'm a bad person. I did something wrong. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done that. Oh my God. Like, what, you know, like, bleh. Instead of, oh, wow, how courageous was it of me to have that conversation? Like, I totally screwed it up. You know, it didn't go the way that I thought it would, but it's okay, because I went towards that, not away from that. I love the story in one of my groups. A young guy had a crush on a young woman, and he was like, he was scared to step into it, you know, and he was like, what do I do? And we said, okay, so you just say like, I've got a crush on you, and we walked him, you know, we just talked about it, and he found the courage to be able to go and say it to her, and now they're in this like beautiful, really sweet, you know, late teenage partnership that's just so sweet. But also he knew that she might not respond that way.
Yeah.
And that he could then come back to us and we'd be like, way to go. You know, like how beautiful that you didn't, you know, that you stepped towards that thing that you want to step towards, and you learned how to have these kind of conversations. And this is just the doorway into more conversations. And so it's like, again, just to name, the absence of teasing is really significant. Really significant. But what we add on to that is the encouragement to actually step, and the ability to reframe the conversation. Again, training for the unknown is, how do I talk to myself? How do I hold myself with love? How do I tell my story with as much care and generosity as I possibly can, instead of giving myself a hard time and being critical of myself, which happens, of course, all the time.
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the inner voice that a lot of us hold day to day is pretty negative and holds us back and stuff. But I think just what I felt there, I mean, even you just sharing that story about the sort of late teen guy, you know, going out to a girl and saying, I've got a crush on you. It's like you celebrated it, and you would have celebrated it regardless of the outcome. So even if the guy would have got rejected, you'd have been like, yo, high five, great stuff, man.
Totally. Yeah.
But the reality is like, most people wouldn't, right? They'd be like, you got rejected again, or that sort of banter, but that banter that has a bit of an impact on confidence and anxiety, and, you know.
Totally. Yeah, right. I mean, both for him, it would be like this, oh God, I shouldn't have desire, or it's not okay to have a crush, or, you know, oh, like I hurt her, or, you know, like I did something wrong. You know, it's like, no, man, you have this beautiful feeling inside you. Like, you have a crush on someone, you care about her, you think she's a beautiful person and an interesting person, and you shared it, and you shared it honestly, and you shared it openly. And again, maybe you didn't do it exactly right, whatever the hell that means, but you stepped into that place with a lot of love and care, and it didn't go well. And way to go. You know, like, let's keep bringing that expression to the world. Let's keep stepping into those places, because how does it feel? And he said, like, I'm nervous, and I'm sweating, and I don't, you know, and it's just like, he said all those kind of things. And I said, yeah, that's aliveness.
Yeah.
You know, when you go to like kiss her the first time, and you're thinking like, okay, you know, should I do it? Like, all of that feeling of like, when do I do this? How do I do this? Like, that's part of the intimacy. That's part of the deliciousness of life. It's not just the kiss. It's all that juicy, fun. He'd laugh because I said juicy, because he always says, like, you know, you always use food kind of terms for this kind of thing. So juicy, he'd get a kick out of the juicy part. You're like, but that's the juiciness of the moment. You know, it's like, when do I hold her hand? You know, like, that tension is just, those are the beautiful moments. And so, you know, relating that to how do we have hard conversations? They're meaningful, and they're us stepping into a bigger expression of ourselves. And so even when they don't go well, we get to the place where it's like, oh, that feels really exciting. I'm nervous. I'm uncertain. I'm, I don't know what to say. But like, that's the richness of aliveness, of life, of meaning, of intimacy, of depth. Like, let's go there. Like, let's go there instead of like wandering off into our phones.
Yeah, it's so good what you're sharing. I think it's definitely not laid thick enough with passion, obviously, what you're sort of sharing it with. And yeah, I think I just love the fact that you're celebrating other people's emotions, you're celebrating other people's scary moments, for you with doing this work. It's so, with regarding like you coaching these people, men specifically, what have you found sort of the hardest part of this journey in coaching, like guys specifically?
Yeah. Well, one, just getting them to show up is
really hard,
challenging. Yeah. Okay. I had an interaction with a couple of guys, friends of mine who I play hockey with, and we joke around, and they got into a thing on the ice. They banged into each other, and it was sort of a bad moment. And so they both come to me independently again, because like guys always sort of saddle up to me in the locker room because they realize, like, I don't know exactly what it is, but you feel safe, and so they share things, and they're both like, what do I do? Like, what do I say? How do I do it? And so I talked through each of them, and I said, you guys just gotta just talk about it. And so they didn't. And so then one day we're walking out of the locker room, and they happen to both be right. One is on one side of them, one is on the other side of me. And I just said, you guys both just, talked about this. You care about each other. So let's have this conversation. And so some of the, it's just interesting to me, like how challenging it is to step into these places. That the vulnerability in men is real. It's scary to expose ourselves, because we've had so many years, so much, just learning that it's not safe, that it's not okay to step in there, to take responsibility for mistakes. Because one of the guys just clearly like made a mistake, and he just couldn't say, "Hey, man, I'm really sorry. I clipped your skate. I didn't mean to. I got in the moment. I got overly aggressive. I apologize." Like, you couldn't do it. So yeah, so those are some of the challenges, and I just love like hanging in those places with people. To me, part of the invitation beyond is the invitation beyond the surface level. It's the invitation into our hearts. It's the invitation into these challenging, difficult places of feeling like we're going to be abandoned, feel like we're going to lose everything. And to me, it's like the opposite is it's healthy masculinity is about vulnerability. As men, it's always like, don't be weak. We think, if I'm vulnerable, I'm weak. But it's like, no. We have that backwards. What women want from us, what our partners want from us, is emotional availability. And when we can be there and take responsibility, and apologize and listen with the ears of our heart and be right there, like, that is super sexy and super, super like, appealing. Like, it's strength to be able to staying in these places. It's strength to take the risk. It's strength, all the listeners who are at that threshold point of like, wait, do I go back to the old, do I go back to the old habits, or do I step into something new? And it's like, it's scary, but it's strength to go towards that difficulty and then have it not work. Also, is like to be able to hang in that. Amazing.
Yeah, it's so good how you've sort of pieced that and tied it together as well, Morgan, because I can relate to this. I think as well the fact that you have just again given a bit of an example, I think is relatable as well, where these two guys had a bit of a clash, just didn't want to have the conversation with each other, rather avoid. No one was going to sort of be the first person to take the ownership and go, right, okay, listen, now we're going to talk this out. As I see this happen quite a lot. So the fact that you bridge that or have been able to hold that space, I think is brilliant. Because obviously we're getting towards the end of this episode. Obviously, I do want our audience to sort of, you have mentioned the invitation beyond. We can see it in the background.
Yeah.
Could you just give our audience a little bit of a summary of what that's about?
Yeah. It started out as, I mean, it's so much of what we talked about. It's so much of what we talked about, and I like to say, the book wrote me. That I didn't write the book. Like, it just was a download of, this is energy that needs to be in the world. And again, the invitation beyond, and it's beyond the nonsense. It was written towards heart-centered, caring men. It was written towards, how do we find our way to our heart and then step beyond and into this beautiful place. So that really is the energy. It has all the practices, the breathing, the discomfort training, cold water, presence, meditation, training for the unknown. And then it has all these beautiful connections of, how do we be healthy men in the world? How do we step into this place of what I like to say is my role as with my partner, like I want her to thrive. I want to see her bring her full beauty alive. I want her to feel so seen and cared and held and honored that she doesn't have to worry about sort of the nonsense, that, like, I usher her into the arena so that she can bring her beautiful energy out into the world. And to me, that's part of the invitation beyond, the invitation into, how do we stand for our people? Because inside of that is so much intimacy, so much love, so much feeling seen and held and holding and seeing and being in those intimate places where life breaks open in these, like, gorgeous, gorgeous ways. So that in a nutshell is the invitation beyond, is how do we both ourselves step out into the world, beyond the nonsense, and also really stand for our people, our kids, our friends, our colleagues, to have everyone around us thrive. Like, that is what I want every day for me to be.
I love that. And I think the fact that you said, and what stood out to me, Morgan, is the fact that you said the book sort of wrote you in a way. You had just felt that, and that's something that you wanted to get out to the world, and it comes from such an authentic place, which I think is brilliant. And I know so many. And by the way, we'll make sure that people can click the link and find that and read a bit more about it and stuff like that. I do have a couple of questions just to sort of summarize and conclude this episode. First one being, it's a question that I do ask every guest, and I love their perspective. So I'd love to know, Morgan, what does mastering your life mean to you?
Thanks for the question. I love it. Been thinking about it, actually, as I listened to some episodes. I was like, okay, how am I going to answer that? How am I going to answer that question? It's so much about what we talked about, Luke. That daily practice, that being really present. Of I know that being my full self, bringing my heart, bringing my love forward in the world is where, that's my integrity. That's what I care about. And so I live in devotion to that. I live in devotion to being present, to, loving Hadley in the beautiful way that I can, to helping her emerge, to helping my kiddos be their full self, in service of all that is good in the world, and really standing here for men and for others of, can I be, actually, it's interesting that now that this is coming through right now, which is, a lot of what's happened when people get to be leaders, when they get to be seen, is there's this wild wobble in integrity. There's this wild wobble in getting caught in the power and the prestige and the, whatever it might be. And I by no means am close to that kind of thing. But I see as I get more visible, as this message gets out more, being able to stay grounded, being able to stay home with myself. There's this tradition of, I just want to be really clear in the example. One, we can go to the Epstein files of all these men who have power and prestige and money, and they get really, really off track. You can go to many of the yoga teachers, the Bikram, the Patabi Joyce, John Friend, who have beautiful downloads into the world, right? They are connected to spirit, but they get into this human experience and they really get off track, and they start to manipulate and dominate and just they sleep with all their all the women in their practice. They embezzle money, like it gets off track. So part of me mastering it, I think, is to really say, wanting this message to get out, and the humility and the humbleness of staying present and staying with it, and just knowing I'm on the journey too.
Oh man, I really like that, and I know obviously you went a bit on a tangent, but I thought it was brilliant, and it brought it together, Mo. It brought it together really well, and I love that.
Thank you.
That is your answer as well. It's unique to you, so thank you. And I just want to lastly ask you, where would the best place be for our audience if they sort of wanted to ping you a message, drop you a follow, or find out more about what you do?
Yeah, thank you for that. And one is just to say thank you, Luke, for all the energy that you're putting in the world, to your devotion to do this, your heart and your care, and just beautiful questions and presence is really an honor to be with. So thank you for having me and for what you're putting out there.
Absolutely. I appreciate that as well.
Yeah. So morganrich.com/courage is a resource for listeners that they can go and do some of the practices we talked about. Just sort of steps them into, how do I have conversations? How do I have these, how do I step into these places? Not unlike what we talked about. So then obviously morganrich.com is my website. You can find all kinds of resources there. My YouTube channel is @MorganRichBeyonder. And there's videos, there's other podcast appearances, there's all kinds of meditations and resources there. My Substack, where I do a lot of writing and reflecting about the world, is morganrich.substack.com. And then let's see, YouTube, Substack. That's probably good for there. You can find me. And if you want to have a conversation, come and sign up for a 15-minute conversation. I'd love to have it. And I do have a program called Inhabiting Purpose. This is sort of this beautiful program of a month-long coaching work that is about, you got something about to come forth. And I'm really good at seeing that thing and grabbing onto it and shining light on it to help you get to that and open up that place. It's one of my special Spidey skills. So
brilliant. Well, look, please send me those links as well.
Yes,
if you send those clickable links, obviously we can just literally paste that into the show notes. People will probably take a listen from here, but just so that they can click on it and head straight over there. But look, final thing from me. Well, honestly, I know you've already said some really kind words about what I'm trying to put out to the world and stuff, but I just want to say right back at you and thank you for 7 a.m. wake up time to be on this show. It means a lot to us. So thank you very much for investing this time and sharing some great stuff.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks. Honor to be here.